It was May 1980, and I was swimming in a river of music as I sang the Bach Mass in B minor. The other choristers and I had trained for this 2-hour challenge. We had learned all the notes and practiced the melismas, those runs of notes, and built our stamina. And now, though I was singing with power and precision, I no longer needed to cling to the certainty of the score. Instead, I allowed myself to be carried in that glorious and inevitable current of sound. I will never forget it. It was like riding waves, floating, dancing in the surf. And we literally did dance through most of the movements, the singers and the conductor alike. There are so many that are just lilting, and it's hard to stand still. So I wonder how many of you have ever felt in the flow of a creative activity? I'm seeing some nods and some hands. It could be anything, you know, when time is suspended and you're totally focused in the moment. It could be whether you are singing or dancing or painting or drawing, writing, doing needlework, designing a garden, rebuilding a motor, decorating a cake. In those moments, the rest of the world melts away and into some other than now. And all that exists is the moment, the activity, the flow. And flow is a metaphor that I use for that a lot. That's how it feels to me when I'm in that moment. And it's like the creativity is moving through me. And it's kind of spectacular. You may have other metaphors for it, other concepts or images that that give you or that reflect that same feeling. But that's the one that I use. And being in that flow is a tremendous gift, but it's not necessarily free. Just as a surfer has to swim out against the current to catch that one perfect wave, we all, creators and makers alike, must do the work to place ourselves at the right place and time to allow inspiration to strike. We have to prepare ourselves. We learn and practice our craft, maybe. We stay open to the process. And we take the time. We have to take the time for all of this to happen. So creativity can't be rushed. My mother used to tell the story about baking chocolate chip cookies to send to my brother at Boy Scout camp. And she baked a lot and sent cookies, and my brother and his friends all looked forward to receiving them. Well, one day, she sent a note in that box of cookies that said, "Sorry they're burnt. I was in a hurry when I made them." And you know, her point was that she was rushing and not paying attention. And so the result was not what she had intended. And it actually took longer, right? It took longer than the process could have. And of course, she salvaged them by turning the moment into a funny story and a lesson. So that's a form of creativity too. So she did catch the wave eventually. Writer Elizabeth Gilbert says that the final product of our labor isn't the important thing. Instead, what is sacred is the time that you spend working on the project and what that time does to expand your imagination and what that expanded imagination does to transform your life. I've been thinking a lot lately about what expanded imagination can bring to the ways we humans interact with one another. I was part of a wonderful example of the power of imagination and creativity at the town hall meeting on anti-Semitism that happened in on May 31st. Some of you were there, I think. It was a congregation, Beth Shalom, and they convened it in response to anti-Semitic messages that have been posted at a residence along Browns Valley Road. The meeting began with some remarks by Rabbi Goldstein, Napa City Manager Steve Potter, and Vice Mayor Beth Painter. And then they opened up the floor for comments. I had attended the meeting to show my support for my Jewish neighbors, but I didn't feel particularly hopeful that anything much would come out of the meeting, other than maybe people would get to air their opinions. So I was not prepared for what happened next. Person after person stood up in that room to offer great ideas for positive responses that we could do together. It was amazing. There were ideas like using art to send positive messages of love that would counter and overwhelm the hateful ones. Creating public events that would build community and goodwill. Showing up at events like Porch Fest and farmers markets to spread messages of love and connection. And by the time the meeting ended, someone had set out sign-up sheets so that all that energy in the room could be harnessed. So stay tuned for more information about how to get involved in these efforts, because they will come. I learned so much that evening about meeting hate and divisiveness with creativity and curiosity, about responding to the world in hope by putting love to work. As I sat in that meeting, I felt a message in my head shift from intractable rigidity to flexible possibility. The change caused my body to relax and my heart to open. What a difference a new message can make. So, lessons on the powers of internal messages and metaphors keep coming up for me. Recently, I was trying to help resolve a situation that had been simmering for a while in the lives of some folks I care about. And somehow I thought that I could step in and make things better. Do any of you ever do that? I'm probably the only one. I don't know. So eventually, though, I noticed that my participation in the situation was only making things worse. And I felt like I had moved from being an outside observer to being part of the problem. Part of the problem. And I noticed that I was feeling tied up in knots. I was struggling to figure out what to do next. Fortunately, as I gave the situation my attention, I realized that my imagination was already at work, helping me to find a creative solution. An image came to me, a picture of a large and dense knot made of thick string with multiple ends sticking out of it. And all those ends were pulling, which only, of course, made the knot tighter, right? And as I turned that image in my head, I realized that without meaning to, I too was pulling on one of those threads. And I was making the knot tighter myself. Now, I'm guessing you've all experienced trying to untie a knot where the tangle that's been cinched really tight. And unless it's a slip knot, which I always hope for, the tangle won't come undone by tugging on the ends, right? You have to loosen the knot, slowly, patiently, paying careful attention to which thread is wrapped around which, and working at it, loosening. And sometimes, as when the knot is in, say, strands of a necklace, it's helpful to put the whole mess in some soapy water or some baby oil or something. which acts as a lubricant to help the chains slide past each other. This metaphor helped me untie the tangle in my own mind. I realized that to get the results I wanted, I had to stop adding tension to the situation. I had to let go. And there was something I could still do. I could provide the oil, the balm, the calm, loving presence that might allow the parties to relax their tension too. I've just begun using this approach that came from that metaphor. And though time will tell, I have hope that this is a good approach and that it's working. Rosemary Watola-Tromer talks about the importance of examining our metaphors and finding new ones when we realize the old ones don't work for us. Her TED Talk helped me to understand my own experience with this not image. And of course, you may not see images the way I do, but still, we use metaphors all the time in our current situations. I'll say more about that, but Tromer says that our metaphors can be powerful tools to approaching life situations when we notice them, when we take time to consider how they are affecting us, and then ask ourselves whether there might be other, more useful metaphors that would help us meet the present circumstance. So in my situation, I had told myself that I was tied up in knots, I was tangled up in a tightly wrapped problem, and the metaphor had me stuck until I started playing with it, asking what I could learn from it. So I came to imagine it in a different light, one that suggested how I might approach the problem. And when I arrived at that particular picture, my body relaxed and my heart opened up, and I knew I had found something true. So I wonder what metaphors may be at play in your life. Are you feeling your spirits rise? Are you feeling cut low? Are you fighting a cold or fit as a fiddle? Are you standing on shifting sands or solid ground? Is your life a roller coaster or a garden path? What does your metaphor have to teach you? And how might it need to shift in order to become something true? I'm not talking about magical thinking here. The belief that if we name a current situation, perceive it as negative, like being ill or poor or not having the resources that we need, then we'll inadvertently get stuck there. I'm not talking about that. I think it's important to name the situations in our lives, our circumstances. Yet it's also important to examine the meaning we assign to those circumstances. Do I see my situation as a punishment or a trial? Or do I see it as a challenge that may have lessons or even gifts to offer? That's where the metaphors come in. That's where the metaphors can be a reset button for our thoughts. Now, Tromer has some techniques for this, for playing with those metaphors or coming up with new ones. One of them is to start with Emily Dickinson's line, "Hope is the thing with feathers." To create your own metaphorical sentence, like, "Panic is the vice grip that crushes the pipe so nothing will flow." Or, "Kindness is the sunshine that dries up tears." That's a fun one to play with. You might also try considering how you would approach your life differently if you were something you see around you, say a doorstop or a poppy or a piano. I don't know, something might come from that. I use that sometimes when I'm out walking in nature. What is this tree doing? Oh, it's moving in the wind. Sometimes that's very useful. The important thing is to pay attention and let your mind explore. And although these ideas are fun and playful, it's also such an important tool. For the metaphors we tell ourselves have the potential to change the way we approach not only our personal problems, but also how we interact with each other and live our values in the world. And tools like this, I think, are more important now than ever. We are all in one way or another still adjusting to deep elemental changes that have occurred in our bodies, minds, and spirits following some years of upheaval. We've been deeply affected by pandemic, polarizing and hate fomenting of the past presidential administration, climate change and climate-related catastrophes. The world is different now. So it is necessary to abandon thoughts of returning to the old normal, supported by old habits and conditioning and metaphors. And instead, my sense is that we need to let go of some old ways in order to make space for curiosity and creativity in this new reality. What better time to shift the metaphors we use to talk about how we relate to the world? The activist Valerie Coward gives a powerful example of shifting metaphor. When she's thinking about how we face what could look like a very dark future. Her sick faith helps her find hope upwelling in the darkness, which prompts her powerful words, "What if this isn't the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb?" She proposes that we are at a time of great transition in this country, one that could potentially lead to a truly just, equitable, and prosperous future for all if we are willing to work for it. And she asks, what does the midwife tell us to do? Breathe and then push. I love that metaphor. It is immensely hopeful without sugarcoating the hard work needed to push toward the world we want to see, toward the world that we want to leave our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. There is so much good and wisdom here, right here, to work with as we go forward. Now is the time to entertain new visions with curiosity, creativity, and goodwill, to meet the challenges of today and grow sustainably and faithfully into the future. It's time to seek models that make us both excited and a little uncomfortable, and to try some new things. As we look for metaphors that serve this congregation, as we engage in the work before us, the work of building and strengthening beloved community here within these walls and beyond. Maybe breathe and push is the right metaphor for this moment. Maybe it's about loosening the knot. Maybe it's about seeing the world in a grain of sand, or something completely different. Whatever it is, may we find joy in this new season of exploration. May we take the time to foster creativity with goodwill and calm presence. And may we trust that if we let go, we will catch a new flow that will carry NVUU, our community, and our world swiftly and surely in the right direction. May we move forward together. Amen.